And we'll open this now to anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project. So y'all come. And please begin your testimony with your name and address.
Hello, my name is Daryl Faircloth, and I live at 818 Ford Street, along the bike path. Have a pretty view of Mountain View Park. And I guess I don't know what the appropriate time is to speak, but I'm not saying I'm against the project. I'm not saying I'm for it. I just have some considerations that I would like to throw out there. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time or I should step down.
Well, strictly speaking, it's not the appropriate time, but we'll let you go ahead now, and we'll keep that in mind when we ask for opposition.
So I'm here in regards to the conditional use permit and allowable height for the proposed Logos School. Several concerns. While the project proposes to install a roundabout on Mountain View Road, certainly the shortest path for vehicles traveling to and from the school to drop off will be on F Street. And currently the school year exists a fair amount of traffic due to McDonald's School, the charter school, the junior high school, and then there's also some school bus pickup drop-off locations along F Street. So I'm not very clear if F Street will punch through at some point. As far as a traffic bridge, from what I've heard today, sounds like D Street primarily, but that's just a concern I've had. With this new development, it seems like a stop sign will be needed to be placed at Mountain View and F Street because it's already difficult to cross during school time. So we have a four-way stop at D Street and Mountain View, F Street, and Mountain View seems like that would be appropriate consideration. As far as Mountain View Road goes, it'd be truly unfortunate if the current undeveloped portion of Mountain View Road North is not provided with the sidewalk, street improvements, bike lanes as part of this project. Sounds like they're going to widen the asphalt and 2-foot shoulder, but nothing there. It's just we see this time and time again in Moscow that we do these developments that are partially done, and then it takes 15 years to get new sidewalks and bike lanes put in. So those are just other observations I've had with that. Currently, Mountain View Park is a dog park. There's people that worked hard to get that, and I hope that their efforts on that wouldn't change in terms of the development of a school adjacent to Mountain View Park. And then I have a question is, once this is approved for a school development later down the line, could residential be added to this property or
to the subject property itself?
Property itself, once it's approved as a...
Is that something that could happen, Becky?
Not that it will, it's just a question.
I would imagine with this subject property undergoing a conditional use permit, if it was approved, any changes to the site would require an amendment to the conditional use permit.
And I guess I would amplify that. If the application before us tonight is for this property for this use, and if there were to be a change in that use, it would come back to us.
Great. And then...
Can I comment on that really quickly, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
That's totally true. However, the parcel is certainly large enough that it could be subdivided and additional structures could be placed on that north, it looks like.
But it would go through another process, though.
Yeah. Okay. But it is possible. Okay.
And then in regards to the height increase, I think it's unfortunate the initial article in the Daily News announcing this proposed project noted the buildings would hold low roof lines to respect views from other people's properties, that type of thing, and then to learn later that we're kind of going huge. As you know, we're talking 1,200 seat chapel, gymnasiums. I understand that part, but in a sense, the school portion could be kept to a one-story facility and still be collegiate and it would cost, more land development around the gymnasiums and stuff, and understanding those need certain heights, but I would hope that would be taken into consideration. And my example would be McDonald's Elementary School. It's a one-story building. They have a gymnasium, and it looks pleasing for the most part. So Lena Whitmore would be another example, other than their gym is very small, and it's by no means set up for any kind of sanctioned athletic programs. So I guess with that, that's my comments, considerations.
Thank you, Mr. Faircloth.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this project? Last call. Okay, it's now time to shift the burden to those who would like to oppose the project. So anyone who'd like to speak in opposition, please come up and give your name and address, and we'd be happy to hear from you as well. Don't tell me y'all just came for the fights tonight.
My name is Marilyn Lisso here Coates, and I live at 824 Ford Street. And I'm not opposed to education, and I'm not opposed to the religion, and I'm not opposed to children and learning. But this is a iconic, beautiful view in Moscow, and I can see it being developed. It'll be developed, but the height, I have a problem with the height. And I think that when they said Gothic, that it's because of the classical education, etc., I think that we have a problem with form to what the function of this space is being used for. Is the form isn't really following the use of the landscape. We were in the flood in the 90s, and where the street is that they're going to put in and the chapel, that was all flooded. And I know that they're going to, up to my knees. It flooded that plane first before it came into onto the bike path. And I just think that, to go out and hear, like yesterday I went out and the crows were all gathered in the trees, and the birds I could hear, and I looked at the mountain and I thought, well, I'm not going to see you if this 46-foot height gymnasium and chapel go in. And I know I'm just one person, but I think Moscow, and I think that Logos understands this also, because I think that their aesthetics for the beauty of where we live and trying to make it so that they not only build a school, but they're also being sensitive to the landscape. Frank Lloyd Wright did it very well, and I don't think that you have to have a Gothic school in order to have a wonderful education. I think that you can build something that really preserves some of the beauty of the land that we have in Moscow, Idaho. That mountain is an iconic view, and we will not see it anymore once this 46-foot height chapel and gymnasium and school. And I can understand the concerns for the chapel. For the gymnasium. I can understand that. But the school can be designed differently, as well as the chapel. And I think that they could work a little better with keeping Moscow, Idaho sensitive to the aesthetic of that beautiful mountains, the wildlife that we have, and all that. So that's my concerns for this.
Thank you for your comments. Other comments?
I'm Brad Halter, 1301 Walenta Drive in Moscow. And I just have a quick question regarding the floodplain. I was wondering if anybody knows whether the 1996 flood was considered a 100-year flood. Thank you.
Do you have any
I
information
believe
about
it.
that?
I believe it was, but I would have to research to know for certain. But
We
I,
have a floodplain expert right
yeah.
there.
No, here, go ahead and tell us right now. Come up.
Yeah, I'm Scott Becker with Hodgin Associates at 405 South Washington. The 96 flood, it varied in the area that you were at as to where the 100-year flood was. But through Moscow, that did not reach the 100-year mark. I believe it was, and I guess just to step back a little bit, the 100-year flood doesn't necessarily refer to what happens every 100 years. It's the percent chance that a flood of that magnitude could happen in any year. So a 1% chance is the 100-year flood. So it was up there around the 85-year flood is what they would have classified that as. We did some floodplain analysis lately and have worked with FEMA to get these numbers. So yeah, that was right around in the 85-year flood is what they would have considered that.
So close but no cigar?
Right.
Okay.
For the most part. Now there was areas that did get impacted a little bit more, and they would be. I think they did consider that the 100-year flood in certain areas, but in Moscow it wasn't.
Thank you. Other comments opposed to this project?
Good evening. My name is Tony Driver. I live at 2322 Concord Street, adjacent to Mountain View Park, and I'm a neighbor to the proposed site. My formal name is Arthur Anthony, but the only people that call me Arthur is my mother. And so please refer to me as Tony. I would appreciate that. Madam Chairperson and board members, thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight in opposition to the application for the conditional use permit. My arguments are based in two broad categories. One is environmental, the other is economic. On the environmental side, I submit to you that my entire life's career has been devoted to soil erosion and sediment control. From the years 1990 until the year 1998, I served on the board of directors of the International Erosion Control Association. And through my officer's position and responsibilities to that international group, I worked very closely with Soil and Water Conservation, Bureau of Land Management, other agencies in creating the Certified Professional in Erosion and Sediment Control certificate. I myself was one of the earliest holders of a CPESC certificate. Certificate was created to test and to vet applicants and their qualifications to participate in conjunction with people like our local design groups to prepare soil erosion and sediment control plans. I myself retired in the year 2000, and I no longer carry the certification because I don't want to go to the convention every year and do all of the continuing education requirements, and also it's rather expensive. And so I have let my certification elapse. I tell you that story in the hopes that I might impress upon you that you might think that I know what I'm talking about when I present this to you. On the environmental side of the argument, the area in question is a very, very low-lying wetland. I feel confident that if submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers that the western portion of this plot would be designated, if they were asked to survey, as a certified wetland. The qualifications for a wetland take into consideration much more than just standing water and the movement of water. It has to do with the entire ecosystem associated with the discharged area. In our case, we're talking about Paradise Creek. Some of us well remember that in 1982, the city of Moscow created Mountain View Park. Mountain View Park, prior to that, was a standing wetland, and a marsh. Paradise Creek was the primary source of stormwater evacuation, and it harbored thousands upon thousands of different species and critters, from microbes to red-winged blackbirds, all composing what's referred to as a riparian condition. The Clean Water Act of 1981 established the rules that would be implemented over time, and the wetland provisions of that act were not implemented until 1983. We grandfathered in just before. But if you were here and living there like I was, you saw us bring dump truck after dump truck of fill. We put approximately an average, I should say, of 6 feet of fill on top of the wetland in order to remove it. In the process of doing that, we then did knee-jerk reactions for almost 10 years of actually dredging Paradise Creek. And it wasn't until through the testimony of the folks at Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute that we understood what a riparian condition is and what it entails. We've heard testimony tonight from the applicant with regards to stormwater management, to regards to the floodplain, etc., but all of those concerns have been directed to the site itself. The questions posed about floodplain, as an example, are directed to what are the impacts on the site with regards to floodplain. There have been no questions or comments with regards to the impact of environment or floodplain downstream from the site. If you look at this wonderful plan, which, by the way, compliments to the architects and to the designers for a beautiful plan. It is beautiful. It's just gorgeous. I just hate it that it's located on this particular site. The topog that you see before you, each one of those lines represent, I think, a 2-foot fall, if I'm correct from previous viewing at planning and zoning, which means that from from east to west, the property falls toward Paradise Creek from approximately 7 feet in total. It's very low. If you also look on the design in front of you, you see on the edges, there's some little things on the edge called retention ponds. Retention ponds are a technique in soil and sediment control, soil erosion and sediment control to retain water. The natural process of a wetland is just exactly that. I'll give you a visual as quickly and as simply as I can. Water falls on the land. Water percolates through the soil until it's saturated. Our soil type is Palouse, the most fertile land in the world for growing wonderful wheat. Unfortunately, in this case, under that Palouse is a clay lens. The clay lens goes toward Paradise Creek, and so water that penetrates as far as it can then moves laterally across the top of the clay lens until it's eventually discharged into nature's drainage, which is Paradise Creek. Each square foot, each square inch that is removed from nature's sponge, such as buildings, parking lots, roofs, roads, all of the water that falls on each one of those things has to be collected and discharged as stormwater in some manner. Nature's way is to let it go as I described, and what doesn't go pools. It pools until it's, in quotes, retained, until sunshine evaporates it, other factors working in conjunction eventually goes away. I'm surprised, and I have to offer this comment to the designers, that you've designed and planned your retention areas on the north side of your property when the southwestern side of the property is the one most impacted by storm water movement and pooling, which doesn't loosen up until about the first or second week in June. So each of those drops of water has to be collected. They have to be discharged. The only place to discharge them is Paradise Creek, because that's the drainage. So what happens downstream in terms of the riparian condition of Paradise Creek? Sediment occurs, sedimentation builds up, floodplain increases in scope and diameter.